Three big updates for you in this video today. The EU is facing backlash for their trade agreement with President Trump. Also, a new poll continues to deal a major blow to Democrats, and the humanitarian aid crisis in Gaza has finally caught the attention of President Trump. We're going to get to all these stories in this video, show you what both sides are saying, and then give you the bottom line.
Keir Starmer is the third British Prime Minister that President Trump has worked with across his 2 terms. This meeting is finally underway after a little bit of a delay. And you heard it there. We expect them this morning to talk about what to do concerning Russia in Ukraine, what to do concerning Hamas in Gaza, and then, of course, these trade deals. The U.S. and the U.K. already made a trade deal. But it seems like President Trump is also going to be looking for a thank you from Mr. Starmer for the trade deal that he just struck with the UK's neighbors in the EU. And we have the details. This new deal that took 75 minutes behind closed doors for negotiators to come to. In it, the EU is going to purchase $750 billion of U.S. energy. They're going to invest an additional $600 billion in the United States. They will expand purchases of American military equipment. The deal is going to drop the tariffs down to 15% on most European goods, but it's going to have a 0% tariff on American exports.
Okay, so we're picking up where we left off yesterday, and that is new reaction from this historic trade deal between the EU and the United States of America that was closed by President Trump. Now, this is a perfect example of the president keeping good on his promises, putting America first. And as a result of him doing that, you have people who are coming out and criticizing this deal. In fact, they say the EU has caved. It's an act of submission, and it's a dark day for Europe, which is why I have Ground News here on the screen to show you that story. And again, we use Ground News to see what the full picture is, see what both sides are saying, so we could think for ourselves. And if you want to follow along, just go to ground.news/Devory. Now, this criticism is being led by the French Prime Minister, and his beef is that there is a 15% tariff that will be imposed on EU exports and a 0% tariff imposed on American exports, which is just phenomenal. And I think that's the point that Fox Business was making. Take a listen to this.
This is a big week for not just congratulations to the president for getting the European deal signed, but now the China talks start today.
Yeah, which is very big.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to take a step back and say this is pretty phenomenal what's happening. I mean, President Trump is basically resetting the terms of global trade single-handedly and in the face of unbelievable opposition from every economist, every think tank, every business saying you can't do it. It's going to be a disaster. It's going to ruin our economy. Look, a lot of this stuff is yet to be hashed out. The EU deal looks very good for the United States. There is a list of products where we're going to have 0 for 0 tariffs, like airplanes, airplane parts, chemicals, etc. That, I think, is incredibly important because hopefully, frankly, that list continues to expand because at the end of the day, you do want fewer barriers to trade, not more barriers to trade. So maybe that expands. But my gosh, what an unbelievable accomplishment. And I get that if you watch the press reaction to this yesterday, they couldn't believe it. They actually couldn't believe. And by the way, I heard a commentator on the radio this morning, a Brit, talking very nastily about this deal. I think a longtime trade negotiator for Britain, I think that he thinks they caved. I think they did cave. They had to.
And that is the bottom line about this entire trade deal is what was the alternative for the EU Commission, right? To get into a trade war with the United States of America, that would not be good for them whatsoever. And the cool thing about Ground News, when you search up stories like this one, it gives you the bottom line in bullet points. And the final bullet point on the screen, it says the agreement signals a challenging future for EU exporters and a power imbalance favoring the U.S., raising concerns of increased prices and market losses, while some European leaders welcome the deal as avoiding worse outcomes. So just in that bullet point alone, you could see the full picture of what's taking place here. Now, there's a huge benefit to this trade deal that we're about to get to in this next clip, but I just want you to understand something. If you want to be able to think for yourself and do your own research, use a tool like Ground News. So if you want to use this tool for yourself, all you have to do is go to ground.news/Devory, or you could download the mobile app. Just use promo code Devory, And it's going to give you access to everything that I showed you in this video, including 40% off the Vantage plan.
And there is this $750 billion investment in U.S. energy that's part of this. Is that part of Europe's plan to wean itself away from Russian energy?
Well, when I served as ambassador, we were trying desperately to get Europe to abandon Nord Stream 2 and buy energy from us. And, you know, back then they were hooked on cheap Russian gas. They didn't think that Russia posed a threat to Europe. Look how a few years have changed things. So now they don't want to buy from Russia. They want to buy from the U.S. This is something that is tailor-made for this kind of a deal. And I think very soon you're going to see what's, you know, was known as a transatlantic highway of LNG tankers going across the Atlantic to Portugal or to other ports and depositing, you know, large amounts of LNG. And we will become the dominant supplier to Europe, which is in Europe's benefit and it's in our benefit. And it really, really screws Russia, which is exactly the goal.
So as you can see here, there's a bigger picture at play. And just maybe President Trump knows exactly what he's doing. Maybe the media should finally give him credit for his tariff strategy, for what he's doing with these trade negotiations. Now, what's interesting is out of all people who finally are coming out and admitting this, who represent the left, it's none other than Bill Maher who's willing to finally tell the truth. Take a listen to this.
Tariffs. Now, I remember along with probably most people, were saying at the beginning, oh, you know, by the 4th of July, somebody had to think how the country was, the economy was going to be tanked by then. And I was kind of like, well, that seems right to me, but that didn't happen. Now, it could happen tomorrow. I'm just saying that's reality. So let's work first from the reality of that, not from I just hate Donald Trump. Because that's boring and doesn't get us anywhere and leads you to dishonesty. Because the truth is, I don't know what his strategy is. But look, the stock market is at record highs. I know not everybody lives by the stock market, but I also drive around. I don't see a country in a depression at all. I see people out there just living their lives. And I would have thought, and I got to own it, that that these tariffs were going to fucking sink this economy by this time, and they didn't.
So Bill Maher is coming to grips with something we call results. As you guys know, I say this almost in every single episode. Results tell the story. It's how we produce the show. Okay. Our thinking on this show and how I react, I want to gauge my opinion based on what the results say, not on what I think is going to happen or based on conspiracy theories, because there's a lot of that out there. And I'm not saying none of that has value. I just think that people would be best served in their analysis and their reaction and opinions if they first start with the results. Okay, and the results show that Democrats are way off. They have no idea who they are and where they're going. Mainstream media continues to make the same mistake over and over. They don't know how to cover President Trump in a fair way. And 3, President Trump has accomplished more in 6 months than Joe Biden did in 4 years. That is an example of results. So anybody can have an opinion, but results is a good place to start if you want to offer up a fair analysis. Now, speaking of that, how does the American people feel about what President Trump's been up to, especially foreign policy wise? Take a listen to this.
The president has shifted on Vladimir Putin. The president has received criticism on foreign policy in general, but what do voters seem to say?
Yeah, this one was a surprising one to me, given everything that's going on in Russia, what happened in Iran, what happened in Gaza. But the bottom line is Democrats in the American voters' minds cannot hack it. What are we talking about? Party trust to more on foreign policy. Well, the GOP holds an average 6-point lead in the month of July. Look at this. Fox News came out last week, plus 3 points for Republicans on foreign policy over the Democrats. You think that number is not high enough for you? How about the Wall Street Journal? GOP plus 8 points when they match congressional Democrats up against congressional Republicans. The bottom line is this. Despite everything that's going on in the world right now, Republicans are more trusted on Democrats when it comes to foreign policy and the world at large.
Now, I believe one of the main reasons why the numbers are continuing to be positive for Republicans, because they are not delusional to the same degree as Democrats are. I mean, think about it. Democrats are seriously considering endorsing a socialist communist candidate for New York City mayor. They are the same people who believe boys can play in girls' sports. They're the same people who believe that men can give birth. They are the same people who have zero restrictions on abortion. They are the same people who put illegal aliens ahead of American citizens. We can go on and on and on.
How has this changed, or how does this compare to during the campaign?
Yeah, again, this to me was a surprising number, since Donald Trump said he'd come in and broker all these peace deals. And while he's brokered some, he hasn't obviously brokered one between Ukraine and Russia, and obviously the situation in Gaza. But take a look here. Trust more in foreign policy. You go back to 2024, Trump had a 6-point advantage over Kamala Harris. Again, look at the average right now. It hasn't moved despite everything that's going on in the world. You see Republicans plus 6 points here. And this goes back to a larger issue that we have discussed over and over again here in the mornings. Despite any misgivings that the American public might have about Donald Trump, when you match up Republicans against Democrats, Donald Trump against Democrats, still at this particular point, they are doing significantly better than you might expect. And when it comes to the issue of foreign policy, again, what you see is in the American voters' minds, Democrats simply put can't hack it. More voters trust Republicans on foreign policy, very much like they did back during the 2024 campaign.
Yeah, you heard him right. Democrats can't hack it because they are too obsessed with President Trump. I sound like a broken record, but I'm going to have to say this again. They have taught us one of the biggest life lessons ever. Do not obsess with someone you hate, because that means that hate will consume you and blind you from making common sense decisions. And that's exactly what Democrats lack. No question about it. And of course, we have to address the part of the Wall Street Journal poll that said that independents are down and out on President Trump. Well, listen, the reason why that is because mainstream media continues to lie about the president every step of the way. And it takes time until the truth is finally exposed to independents, or they finally make a decision to do their own research. And I think this next poll is a great example of that. Take a listen to this.
What about the strikes on Iran? Because while they were being contemplated, they were not universally popular.
No, they were not universally popular. And in the immediate aftermath, they were not universally popular. Look at this. Net approval rating, U.S. airstrikes on Iran. In late June, the net approval rating, look at that, -8 points, underwater. But as the American people learned more and more about it, look at this, a 10-point rise. Now it's in the positive. The American people like the move that Donald Trump put on Iran, the U.S. airstrikes in Iran, a positive +2 net approval rating. So again, the bottom line is this. As the American people learn more about these airstrikes, as the American people compare Donald Trump and the Republicans against the Democrats, they see them far more favorably than you might expect.
And that's exactly what I would expect to happen. It's the one thing that Donald Trump has about him that no other politician has experienced. Social media, mainstream media, people just in general, academia, has lied about the president so much that most people don't even know what to think when it comes to President Trump. And when they finally do their research, they find that the media is lying at least 95% of the time about the president, about things that are just stupid. And they're violating ethical principles as it pertains to journalism. So I'm not shocked that the numbers have improved. They will continue to improve for the president because he is results driven. And once people, particularly independents, do their research, they will be on the side of the president more than they will be for Democrats. And now we go to our next story. The president, during his meeting with PM Starmer, was asked about Gaza. And we're talking about women and children who have been starving. Most experts are calling it a humanitarian crisis. Doesn't matter whether you believe that to be true or not. The results show that people are starving. So this is what the president had to say. Take a listen to this.
Mr. President, you just talked about setting up food centres in conjunction with other organisations.
Right.
You're talking about the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation or recognised aid agencies. How will this work?
Well, it's going to be working with the United States. We'll be helping with the food. We have a lot of access to food. We got a lot of food ourselves. And we're going to bring it over there. We're also going to make sure that they don't have barriers stopping people. You've seen the areas where they actually have food, and the people are screaming for the food, and they're 35, 40 yards away, and they won't let them because they have lines that are set up. And whether they're set up by Hamas or whoever, but they're very strict lines, so we have to get rid of those lines. But we're going to be getting some good, strong food. We can save a lot of people. I mean, some of those kids that's real starvation stuff. I see it. And you can't fake that. So we're going to be even more involved. We did some airlifts before, some airdrops, and the people are running for it. And the Prime Minister is going to help us. They're very effective with that. You've done that before, and for many, they've done that for 100 years very well. So it's not very hard to do, actually.
Okay, so let's just cut to the chase. There are a multitude of opinions here, and they differ vastly, starting with the president and the White House. They say that sending money and aid to Gaza is the right thing to do. Democrats say that America should stop sending weapons and support to Israel, and we should recognize Palestine as a second state. And then you have a certain amount of conservatives on the right who support what Israel is doing. They don't care if it takes 10 years, women and children are dying in the process, who have really nothing to do with this war. As long as Hamas is erased, it does not matter the cost. And then you have Christian conservatives who say, hey, wait a minute, we understand Israel needs to defend themselves, but women and children who directly are not involved in this conflict should not be starving. We should not be disrupting humanitarian aid operations. And then you have people who say, well, wait a minute, the aid is there, but the UN is not distributing the aid properly. So whose fault is that exactly? That's not Israel's fault. And then you have a side of conservatives who say what Israel is doing is a genocide. They've gone too far. Netanyahu needs to be thrown in prison. So here's my question to you. Which opinion do you hold about this entire conflict? Do you support what the president is doing? One thing's for sure, Netanyahu disagrees with the reports that there is a starvation occurring in Gaza. Take a listen to this.
President Donald Trump telling reporters a humanitarian crisis in Gaza is, quote, one of the main reasons for his meeting with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. The two are meeting in this moment. He also was asked about comments from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The Prime Minister saying there is no starvation in Gaza. Here's exactly what he said yesterday. Take a listen.
Israel is presented as though we are applying a campaign of starvation in Gaza. What a bold-faced lie. There is no policy of starvation in Gaza, and there is no starvation in Gaza.
So the president moments ago was asked whether he agreed with those claims from Netanyahu.
Based on television, I would say not particularly, because those children look very hungry, but we're giving a lot of money and a lot of food, and other nations are now stepping up. I know that this nation is, right
It's
here.
a humanitarian crisis.
Right.
It's an absolute catastrophe. And nobody wants to see that. And I think people in Britain are revolted at seeing what they're seeing on their screens.
Yeah. Okay, so Starmer makes a good point. It's a PR problem for Israel. Doesn't matter if the photos or videos are fake or real. Doesn't matter. What matters is the way people felt on October 7th is different than the way people feel today. I went over the differences of opinion. I mean, there are people today that it's their business to criticize Israel. That's how much things have changed.
Images matter, and what the world saw were pictures of starving children.
Yeah.
This was too much, even for some of Israel's closest allies, both in Europe and the United States as well. I'm sure there was pressure from Washington being put on Jerusalem, and in fact, there's reports that the Israeli embassy here in Washington realized that a diplomatic catastrophe was happening. But the bottom line is that this was a deliberate Israeli policy of starvation, something, first of all, the U.S. would never do.
Yeah.
And two things. One is the immorality of that. But number two is it didn't work. You know, the war is not over. The hostages have not returned, and we're still at this impasse. And whether you blame Hamas for this or the Israeli government, the bottom line is people are starving in Gaza. And the world finally actually said, no, that's enough.
But one thing is for sure, Democrats' response to this is to seize all weapons and offensive support from America to Israel. That's what they think we should do. And before I show you the clip of the Democrats saying that, I want to get your thoughts in the comment section about what do you believe America should do moving forward? What would you have President Trump do in response to what's currently happening? Now, here's that clip of Senator Van Hollen claiming that he would support seizing all weapons to Israel from America. Take a listen.
So just so I have this clear, are you suggesting the United States cease military aid or the sale of weapons to Israel so long as this starvation in Gaza continues?
Well, what I was referring to right now, John, was the fact that we're spending money to create this alternative private organization backed by mercenaries that has created these deaths. I do believe that we should pause offensive military assistance to the Netanyahu government so long as the Netanyahu government is engaged in what is clearly a strategy to use food as a weapon of war and to try to use it for population control. We've heard members of the Netanyahu coalition just in the last couple of days talk about essentially taking over Gaza, pushing the Palestinians out of Gaza entirely.
Yeah, and this actually takes us to another statement by the president, but it's in regards to Russia. Just like Netanyahu, Putin is going to do what he wants to do. They both have a great relationship with President Trump, but that doesn't mean they're going to take orders from him. And people need to accept that reality. And I think President Trump is accepting that reality, especially publicly, because he just said this.
We can all sense your frustration with Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
Do you think he's been lying to you about his intentions in Ukraine?
Well, I don't want to use the word lying. All I know is we'd have a good talk, and it seemed on, let's say, 3 occasions, it seemed that we were going to have a ceasefire and maybe peace, and you divide it up and you do whatever you have to do, that obviously to get to the end. And all of a sudden, missiles are flying into Kiev and other places. And I say, what's that all about? I spoke to him 3-4 hours ago, and it looked like we were on our way. And then I'd say, forget it, and I'm not going to talk anymore. You know, this has happened on too many occasions, and I don't like it. I don't like it.
Earlier you said that you were going to change the deadline from 50 days.
Yeah,
What is your deadline?
I'm going to make a new deadline of about 10 or 12 days from today. There's no reason in waiting. There's no reason in waiting. It's 50 days. I want to be generous, but we just don't see any progress being made.
Yeah, clearly he's disappointed because his goal from day one was to stop the killing, which means at a minimum there should be a ceasefire. But as I continue to remind everybody carefully here that people in the region that grow up in Russia, the Middle East, people who are not a part of Western civilization, they don't think like Americans. It would make logical sense for them to end this war. It has dragged on long enough. Too many people have died. Resources are being drained. Where is this really going in the end? But when it comes to the way Putin thinks, especially the way that Zelensky thinks, and the rest of them in that region, that's not the way that they see it, okay? So obviously President Trump has came to grips with that. And now instead of playing nice and giving Putin the benefit of the doubt, it seems to me that they're going to switch up their strategy and start applying pressure. What that pressure could look like, well, we're going to find out here shortly, and hopefully that could take us to a conclusion of these wars. Now, let me get you guys' thoughts in the comment section to all of this. Let's start with probably the most conflicting one here, morally, and that is what Israel is facing here, particularly the humanitarian aid crisis in Gaza. Do you believe there is one? That's my first question. Secondly, what do you believe President Trump should do, if anything at all? Let me know your thoughts about that. Also, the poll continuing to show that President Trump has the support, right? And Democrats, they virtually have no support. And we know why that is. But I'd like to get your reaction about that. And then finally, historic, the trade agreement between America and the EU. We talked about it yesterday. But what do you make of the backlash the EU is receiving? Do you believe they got screwed in this deal? I don't. But I want to know what you guys think about all of these stories. Put your thoughts in the comment section below. Now, as I just stated yesterday, we did a video on this historic trade agreement between the EU and the president. And we also went into depth about the Wall Street Journal poll that continues to show devastating numbers for Democrats. So if you missed out on that video and more stories from yesterday, all you have to do is click on it because it's coming up right now.